Okay, my name is Howard Eber and I am an alcoholic, and I'm honored to present our facilitator for this month from Marble Falls, Texas. Please welcome Laura B.
Hi, y'all. My name's Laura. I'm alcoholic, and truly by the grace of God, I've been sober since April the 6th of 1987, and I'm extremely grateful to be here. It's kind of a hectic time, so I came skidding in at the last minute. I warned Howard not to panic if I wasn't here right on time, and that'll be true every Monday that I'm doing it. I'll be here right before. So we are in the middle of page 62. And I'm going to read the paragraph first, and then we'll get into it. This is some yummy goodness. But if you're new, you won't think it's yummy goodness. But I promise eventually it will be. So our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. I did not think so. They arise out of ourselves, and the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot, comma, though he usually doesn't think so. Me especially. Above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness. We must, or it kills us. God makes that possible. And there often seems no way of entirely getting rid of self without his aid. Many of us had moral and philosophical convictions galore, but we could not live up to them, even though we would have liked to. Neither could we reduce our self-centeredness much by wishing or trying on our own power. We had to have God's help. Man, that's a lot. So I just want to start with this premise because I came to Alcoholics Anonymous with the belief that I had a drinking problem. And then you guys started talking to me about ridiculous things like prayer and service and selfishness and character defects and moral inventory. And I just wanted to figure out how to drink like I want to drink and not pay consequences. And there was zero ability for me to connect the dots. What does selfishness have to do with me drinking? Why are we talking about this? I did not, and it says selfishness is the root, right? Ralph talked about that last week. It is literally the core. It's where it springs from, all that is ill within me, the dis-ease that I live with, the malady that I suffer from. The root of that, it grows from this core of selfishness. Me first. What about me? What do you think about me? How am I going to get my way? How am I going to get you to do what I want you to do? It's the constant chatter in my head at all times. What happens is I'm so in, and I love the language in the text, and I hope we will get to it, but I'm so in the bondage of self. And bondage is the perfect word, right? Because I'm locked up. I can't, it's like have you ever seen those horses that have blinders on so they don't get distracted, right? I'm like that. I got these blinders on, and nothing exists outside of my agenda, my will, my plans, my designs, my manipulation, my dishonesty, whatever. All of the various manifestations of self. And so I'm not connected to anything else on the planet. I'm completely consumed with how I'm going to get my way, or dealing with you if I think you're going to interfere with me getting my way, right? And I get so incredibly uncomfortable living like that, separated from God, you, the rest of the planet, right? That I can't tolerate it. And this condition of not drinking and living in the bondage of self becomes so excruciatingly uncomfortable, it demands that I wet it down. And so, because sobriety was the problem before I got here, right? The people around me thought drinking was the problem. For me, sobriety was the problem. I can't stand how I feel when I'm not drinking, right? And so if I'm going to stay sober for any considerable period of time, I'm going to have to figure out how to sit still and be comfortable and not be thirsty. And all of this conversation in these pages from 60 well, until we get to the end of the 164, all of this conversation It's about how I can exist comfortably in my own skin in this moment on the planet with other humans, right? Without finding it necessary to take a drink. And what the book is telling us, and what the first sober members of Alcoholics Anonymous had come to understand with lots of help from our friends outside of Alcoholics Anonymous, is that the core of what is wrong with me lies in this demand that I live with on a daily basis for my own way. Right. And so the idea is that if I could somehow stop demanding, my troubles are of my own making. What does that mean? Right. It means that I've got to demand, and I'm insisting that I get my way. And when you don't comply with my demand, we have trouble. Right. I demand that you not pull me over when I'm speeding. Right. I don't think I should get a ticket for speeding because I have a legitimate reason for being in a hurry. I think my boss should understand when I don't show up for work because I'm having a bad day or whatever, right? I think my family should understand when I continue to not show up in an appropriate way. When I do show up, it's awful. When I don't show up, they're upset, right? There's no win for them. I think my children should understand if I raise my voice because they should behave better. Like whatever that is, I have a demand that I get my way. That is the selfishness that drives me. I have a false belief in place that if I could get my way, everything would be okay. Right? If I could just, and that's what it talks about on the previous page, if I could just arrange the lights and the scenery and the ballet, right? Everything would be great. Wrong. And this is my favorite analogy. And some people in this meeting sometimes I get on meetings and I can't use this analogy because everybody's 12. But some people on this meeting are as old as me. And there used to be this show called The Ed Sullivan Show. And there used to be this guy that came on The Ed Sullivan Show, and he would line up all of these poles across the stage. And then he would get these porcelain plates. And he would put this plate on top of the pole and he would start to spin it, right? No problem. He'd get that plate spinning. He'd go to the next pole. He'd put a plate on it, get it spinning. No problem. Go to the next pole. Now he's got to keep that third one going and go back to the first one. Then he gets a fourth one on there. And now he's running from the fourth to the third to the second to the first. And he gets, I don't know, 8 or 9 plates spinning. And then inevitably what happens is they start to wobble. Things start to get there's plates getting out of whack, right? And he's huffing. He's sweating. He's running from one end of the stage to the other, and he's tapping these plates, trying to keep everything spinning, and it is chaos. And the end result of that every single time is the plates fall, right? Because it's impossible to keep them all going all the time. You eventually run out of energy. That's what happens in my life. I'll start to manage my finances, and then I'm managing the kids, and then I'm managing. And it's all driven with this false belief that if I could just get everything to be the way I think it should be, I would be okay. And I start running on self, and I start getting more and more and more uncomfortable. Right? So it says our troubles arise out of ourselves, right? Myself, right? And the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot. Because God help you if you get in my way. Other people, I think, sort of bump up against trouble and go, oh, maybe I should reevaluate. Not us, right? I love this. I've always said for years, I'm going to get me a shirt that just has a comma on it. People who study the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous will know what that is, right? An extreme example of self-will run riot, comma. Though he usually doesn't think so, because without fail, I am the last one to know. I think I'm trusting God. I think it's all going so well. You know what I mean? And then as the plates start to fall and the chaos ensues and people are resentful at me and feelings are hurt and, friendships are damaged and family is angry. As those things start to happen, everybody in my life is saying she's so selfish. She only thinks about herself. She never considers anybody else. I think I'm trusting God because I got a perception problem. Right? I'm the last one to know. It's pretty clear here what comes next. Above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness. It is not possible for me to be in the bondage of self and in relationship with a power greater than myself at the same time. And we have previously established that I am without any defense against the first drink unless I am in relationship with that power. This is why selfishness is life-threatening. This is why it says it will kill us. Because when I am consumed with self, I am separated from the power that is necessary to keep me sober for 24 hours. I cannot be both. I cannot be a little. I'm either relying on self or trusting God, right? And I just use God because I use God, right? You call it whatever you want to. I don't care if you, in Alcoholics Anonymous, we don't care if you believe in a purple dinosaur. We literally don't care what it is. It's just got to be something bigger than you. We alcoholics must be rid of the selfishness. We must, or it kills us. And then it gives us that God makes that possible. So have you ever woken up and decided to not drink today? You know what I mean? Like today, I'm going to decide I'm just going to not drink today. I'm just going to not have anything till 5 o'clock. Or I'm just going to wait till lunch. I mean, any of that, right? Or if you have some time sober, have you ever woken up and decided to be good today? How'd that go? Have you ever made a decision to stop cussing? Right? And then all you can do is drop F-bombs, like beyond anything ever in the history. Step 1 says that we admitted we were powerless, right? And our lives had become unmanageable. When I remember that I'm powerless, I ask for help. When this is talking about God makes that possible, I forget that I'm powerless. I start thinking, I've been sober a minute, right? My life is looking pretty good. I ought to be able to fill in the blank. It turns out what I ought to be able to do doesn't exist. I am capable of getting up in the morning and following the directions as they're outlined in the text and then letting God have the day. Anything beyond that, total chaos, 100% of the time. I have so much data, right? I have researched this extensively. I hate to tell you, right? The only way that I can live comfortably in my own skin, unthirsty, is to have a relationship with a power greater than myself. The only way I know to get in right relationship with a power greater than myself is by following the directions that are outlined in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Why do I say that? Because of the next sentence. Many of us have moral and philosophical convictions galore. Did anybody drink and go to church? I did, right? I was raised in a good home with a strong faith and a strong religious upbringing. And it was not adequate for the purpose of bringing about sobriety, bringing about a psychic change, bringing about long-term recovery. Because I didn't clear that channel between me and the power before I went to church. I took all the stuff that separated me to church with me. You know what I mean? I went to church knowing that I was lower than Poochie whale shit on the bottom of the ocean, knowing that I had behaved abominably, knowing that there was not going to be any forgiveness for me. So I walked into church separated from. And as they talked, I judged, right? Well, sure, you can do that because you didn't grow up in an alcoholic home. Or you can do that because you're not having to live on the street like I am. Or you can do that because people treated you. I just found exceptions to continue to keep me separated. I knew right from wrong. I believed to my core that there was a God. And I equally believed that if that was true, he would not be interested in somebody like me. Until I got to Alcoholics Anonymous and met a whole fellowship full of people like me, right? Just a bunch of crackpots, social outcasts, mental defects, you name it, right? All of the things. There's a line, I can't remember now off the top of my head if it's in the 12 and 12 or A Comes of Age, but they refer to us as fallen women. right? And I'm like, those are my people. You know what? I like, please come sit by me, right? If you have behaved poorly, I'm your girl. So the belief that there's a power, the idea that there's a power, the feeling that there's a power is not sufficient to separate me from the bondage of self. The only thing that is sufficient, right? It says the last sentence, we had to have God's help. I can think, believe, feel that there is a God who wants me to be sober. But if I don't act, if I don't take the action to clean out all the stuff between me and that power, I'm just going to be drunk thinking, feeling, and believing that God loves me. Right? That's the difference for me. For me, and I'm not saying this for anybody else. Y'all asked me to come talk, so this is my experience, right? The difference for me between what I got in my religious upbringing and what I get in Alcoholics Anonymous is I have these directions to get in relationship with this power. Not just believing that he's out there or that there is one, but I can get in a personal relationship with a power greater than myself that will keep me sober for this 24-hour period of time. I can get in a personal relationship with a power greater than myself that will separate me from self when nothing else will. That doesn't mean that I live separated from self. I called one of my friends this morning because I was having a rash of self. Our morning in my home, I have custody and raising my 7, almost 8-year-old granddaughter. And today she decided she didn't want to go back to school after the Thanksgiving break. And I would love to tell you that I lovingly explained to her about how we were going to handle that, but that's not how that went down, y'all. And I called a friend and said, the sickest person in the room when I do this big book study tonight is going to be me, right? Because I was just out of my mind, but I called a friend, right? And who just lost her daughter. And she said, how are you? And I said, oh, please tell me how you're doing. Tell me about Thanksgiving. Anything. Tell me how you're. And by the end of the conversation, it was about 20 minutes. We were both laughing. She was better. I was better. And I was reconnected, right? And I learned how to do that in Alcoholics Anonymous after I worked the steps, right? After I got through that process of the steps, I can get connected in the morning, and then I get that kind of grace as I go throughout the day. So what we're going to talk about now, right, going forward, not in this meeting, but going forward in the next pages, what these directions are specifically designed to do is to show me how to have God's help. How do I access this power? Doesn't matter what you believe about the power, but that there is one, and it's not me. How do I access that power? Because it tells me if I cannot get separated from self, I cannot survive sober. And I think that's it for me. Thank you so much.